So, let's talk about free market capitalism. It's not just some dry economic system, right? It's one of the most powerful and you could even say elegant ideas ever come up with. It's kind of like the operating system for our modern world. And it makes a big promise, a world of efficiency and prosperity, all powered by our own individual choices. But, like any complex piece of software, it has its own internal logic, its own assumptions about how things work. So today, we're going to pop the hood and take a look inside.
All right, so where do we even begin? Let's start with the core concept itself, the basic theory of the free market. And it is, in principle, a remarkably simple and beautiful idea.
Here it is, the textbook definition. The whole idea is that it's a self-regulating system. You've got supply, you've got demand, and if you just leave them alone, they're supposed to find this perfect, natural balance, the most efficient outcome for everybody. It's a really compelling vision. This idea of order just sort of emerging from the chaos of millions of individual decisions.
But here's where it gets really interesting. An idea this big isn't just floating in space. It rests on a very specific foundation of assumptions. And these assumptions aren't just about money and products, they're about human nature itself. They're about us.
And that brings us to a crucial point. For the market to work the way the theory says it will, it assumes that we, the people in it, act in a very specific way. It actually requires a certain kind of person. So, let's meet this person. And wow, this slide just lays it all out, doesn't it? The huge gap between the theory and, well, reality. On the left, you've got Homo economicus, the ideal actor in this whole drama. He's perfectly rational, a pure calculating machine, always acting to maximize his own personal wealth. But on the right, yeah, that looks a lot more like us, doesn't it? We're often irrational. We're driven by loyalty, love, morality, a search for meaning, things you just can't put a price tag on.
The anthropologist David Graeber just hits the nail on the head with this question. If we aren't just these single-minded little robots trying to pile up wealth, then the whole system's premise needs a serious second look. What else are we trying to maximize in our lives?
It's funny, because some of the early thinkers, like Thomas Malthus, had let's just say a less flattering view of what makes us tick. He argued that it's not some grand rational plan that gets us to work. It's something much more primal, pure necessity. The cravings of hunger or the pinchings of cold. Without that pressure, he figured, we'd all just be napping under a tree.
So that brings us to the next big assumption, this idea that the market is a natural, spontaneous thing, a space of freedom that just kind of appears when the government gets out of the way. But is that really true?
Well, political scientist James C. Scott makes a powerful case that, no, that's not true at all. He suggests that states aren't just passive observers of society, they are active designers. They try to simplify reality to make it legible, easy to measure, easy to see, and ultimately easy to control. Scott has this brilliant metaphor to explain it: scientific forestry. Imagine a real, complex, messy, old-growth forest. To a state planner, it's illegible. You can't easily measure its value. So you simplify. You decide the only metric that matters is commercial timber yield. And then you remake reality to fit that one metric. You clear-cut the whole beautiful, complicated ecosystem and replace it with a neat, orderly grid of a single species of tree. Now it's perfectly legible, it's predictable, but it's not really a forest anymore, is it?
And that metaphor perfectly illustrates the point. The free market isn't some natural state we just discover. It's an engineered landscape, just like that tree farm. It needs this huge, often invisible infrastructure of property laws, contracts, courts, and state power just to exist. It's designed for legibility, not reality.
The philosopher Michel Foucault took this idea even further. He saw this whole system not as the absence of government, but as a very particular and sophisticated technique of governing. The system doesn't just step back. It has to actively and constantly produce and maintain the very conditions, the people, the rules, the spaces that allow a free market to seem natural.
Okay, so if the economic model simplifies reality to make it legible, like that forest, what gets left out? What gets bulldozed in the process? What's the real price that doesn't show up on the balance sheet?
Let's start with a number: 16. During the Industrial Revolution, this was the typical number of hours in a workday for a child laborer, a reality that Karl Marx documented in painful detail. This testimony quoted by Marx from a factory worker, it's just staggering. He's talking about his 7-year-old son, carrying him through the snow to work a 16-hour shift, having to kneel down to feed him while the machine kept running because it couldn't stop. This is the human cost. In the cold logic of the factory, a person, even a child, becomes what Marx called a mere living appendage to a machine.
The critic John Ruskin put it so well. He said that whenever we celebrate something for being cheap, we're often just ignoring a cost that's being paid by someone else, somewhere else in the system. Real efficiency isn't just about the lowest price tag. For Ruskin, cheapness was usually a sign that an injustice was being hidden.
This leads to a really powerful idea from a totally different field, medicine. It's a term called iatrogenesis, popularized by Ivan Illich. It literally means harm caused by the healer. It's when the cure is actually what makes you sick. So, let's just ask the question, can an economic system be iatrogenic? In its very attempt to cure the problem of scarcity, can it accidentally create its own kinds of social sickness? Things like alienation, inequality, or environmental collapse? Can the pursuit of economic health actually make society sick? And this brings us right back to where we started. On one side, you have the theory, the clean, legible map. It's a simple grid, it assumes we're all rational actors, and it measures success in profit and loss. On the other side is the territory, the messy, organic, unpredictable reality of human society, full of complex people, full of values that can't be priced, and full of hidden costs.
And that leads us to the final, critical question that all of these thinkers are really pushing us to ask.
Because, look, the goal isn't just to tear up the map and say, see, it's wrong. We know that all maps are simplifications. That's what makes them useful. The real challenge is this. Once you understand the limitations of your map, once you see what it leaves out, how does that change the way you navigate the world? How do we find our way forward?